I'm James. I'm alcoholic, and yeah, I mean, I guess I picked the theme of seeking just because. Well, I'll get into that, but the thing that's given my life more meaning than anything else I've been through, like anything else I've experienced or done. Like none of it really matters in the end. Like what matters to me the most is that I found God and that I'm in a relationship. I have a relationship with Him. Like everything else is kind of just a bonus, like as long as I seek Him. And so I'm just going to start a bit about my background and how I eventually got to God. And yeah, so all right. So as a kid, I had some issues, which isn't unusual. Like kids have issues. This world's not perfect. But like, I was always seeking. I was always seeking for something, and like I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know I was doing it. Like I was trying to find it in other people and things. And one of the challenges with that is like the best way I can explain me as a child is like the only thing that really explains it is I was on the autistic spectrum. Like I was really incapable of expressing myself. I was extremely emotional, and like I was intelligent too, but like I didn't really do well in school. Like I couldn't really wrap my head around certain topics. I'm in a Catholic school and they're talking about God and different things, and like I just didn't understand stuff like life and death and God and the devil, and so I struggled in that way. And so like one of the big things in my childhood repeating theme is kind of loneliness. Like I had a hard time having friends and couldn't really connect with people, and so I was just lonely a lot of the time. And just as as an example of how like emotional I actually was, like I had all these emotions inside of me, and I didn't know how to express them properly until like I looked like a good target for bullies, right? So someone would try and bully me, and I'd snap into blackout rage and beat them up, and then go cry in a corner because I didn't know what happened. And and yeah, my only escapes, like sports, helped me a lot. I was a different boy when I was playing like soccer, so sports was one of my healthy coping mechanisms. But the other one, like my first addiction, was video games. They were my best friends. They were my first love, and it's just like they helped me escape, right? And then so by seventh grade, I was kind of scared of myself, and I was scared of the consequences of getting in fights all the time. And so I guess something happened in seventh grade, and I just suppressed everything. I never went into another blackout rage again, and I was just became like an emotionless, which wasn't true. It was a mask I was putting on, but I just suppressed everything I was feeling. And then fast forward a bit, around 17, yeah, when I was around 17, I found alcohol and drugs. And as soon as like the first day I got drunk, like I drank like an alcoholic, I got like sick for hours. And I woke up the next morning, I'm like, wow, that was awesome. Let's do it again. And I thought I had found what I've been seeking for. Like I thought like this alcohol, like getting intoxicated, like going to parties, and like this is the meaning of my life. Like this is what I've been seeking all these years. And so at first it wasn't bad. Like I did enjoy it. I thought I was happy, like, but it was really just looking back, I can tell it was more manic than happiness. And but like, people started to like me. I was like able to express myself. I stopped feeling lonely, and well, yeah, and so that addiction lasted about 8 years. And it just progressively got worse and worse. Like like about halfway through it, I started getting in fights again all the time, and I was like a blackout drinker. Like every day I drank, it was a blackout. So I don't remember much of those days. So I'm not going to talk too much about what happened, even if I want to. I just don't remember. But like I'd wake up being in a fight, like black eye and bleeding from everywhere, and then eventually just got to a place at the end of my addiction where like I had left all my friends. I had stopped talking to everybody. I would just drink alone. And like I had like so much like so much hatred and anger inside of myself. Like I hated everything, and I was always angry. There was no more fake happiness. There was no more mania. It was just suicidal depression and anger and hatred. And like I wanted to stop. I tried willpower, and I guess I tried a couple other things I don't really remember, but I couldn't. Like I thought the only way I could stop, like my way out was dying. Like death was my way out from this misery. but I hated myself so much at this point that, there's fear of taking my own life because fear of the unknown. But like I also didn't think I deserved that. I thought that, killing myself would be too easy of a way out. That my new life purpose from this point was to kill myself with drinking and to suffer in the meantime. Like I was born to suffer and to let alcohol kill me. That was my way out, and that's the only thing I would allow myself. And but like after but after a while, like it was hard living with that, and I couldn't do it anymore. So I came up with what I thought was a great loophole. Like I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna join the army, go off to war, and get myself killed, and maybe kill a few people in the process. Blow some things up. It'll be fun, and then I'll be dead, and I won't suffer anymore. Like I didn't even know there was a war going on. Like I probably would have joined the army and just like marched around a lot and not actually use a gun or anything or get shot, which is what I wanted, right? And anyways, at that point, so my grandfather had passed a few months before this point, or I don't really know the timeline, but he had passed. And like he was the only male figure I've ever looked up to. Like I never got along with my stepdad. I never really got to know my dad. And so my grandfather was the only man I've ever looked up to in my life. And then he died. And then I had that night, I had sleep paralysis. And then the next morning, I had a voice in my head talking to me 24/7. And I've had psychoses before, but this was the first one where I was having full-blown conversations with this voice in my head. And I'm not going to get into that too much. Let's just say it wasn't great, and it lasted multiple years. And but like I had some logical thoughts in my head at that point. I'm like, there's no way the army's going to accept me now. Like, I've got, like, I'm hearing voices. They're not going to let me give me a gun and like join the army and go off to war. So I decided to talk to my family doctor, and he sent me to the Royal, and I was in the Royal for about 4 months. And the plan was, deal with the voices. I'm going to become sane again. Not that I was sane before the psychosis, but, I didn't know that. And then I'll join the army, and I can go back to drinking and using drugs, and then I'll get myself killed, and there you go. That's my plan. And yeah, and just as an example of how out of it I was in detox and in rehab, like I didn't even know I was in rehab until 2 months in. I'm like, I just thought I was in the hospital, and the next thing I know, I'm like, wait a second, I just went through detox, and now I'm in rehab. Like this is unusual. Like I never thought I'd do this, and but yeah, anyways, I started getting my own thoughts back, and I realized like all this hatred that I had in myself. Like, I hurt a lot of people in my addiction, and I just hated myself so much for doing that. Because like as a child, I was the one who fought bullies. Like all those blackouts I went into, they were always against bullies. Like I had this friend that was a woman that was different also, and she'd get picked on all the time. So I beat up her bullies and defend her. And but by the end of my addiction, I was the bully. I was the one hurting people. I wasn't defending anyone anymore, and I just hated myself so much for that. And so I realized that joining the army and going to potentially hurt more people just didn't make any logical sense. So I decided recovery. So I joined NA and started doing that for a while. And the first year, let's say, I couldn't get more than 2 days sober. But then, because like at this point, I thought, yeah, I'm just going to quit drinking alcohol and then I'll start doing drugs. Like drugs are okay. That's not my issue. Then I had a binge on drugs that was pretty bad. And I'm like, okay, my issue is substances. So I started taking it more seriously. And I had a year, I got the next year sober, no drugs, no alcohol. And I was also unmedicated because they had given me meds at the hospital. But I thought, I don't need meds. I just need to stop drinking and I'll be good. And so I went off meds. I left the program that I was in, and so I got that year with no meds, no drugs, no alcohol, and it was complete hell. Like I'm grateful I've had it, because if I stayed on meds the whole time, I never would have known if these symptoms I've experienced were drug or alcohol induced or were actual issues that I have, right? And now I know. And yeah, so that was a year of going from paranoid, angry manias with hallucinations to suicidal depressions where I'm near catatonic, with like OCDs that made me want to kill myself, the psychosis that was 24/7, keeping me from sleeping. And I was just incapable of sleeping unless I was awake for a minimum of 38 hours. Like I tried desperately, and I just couldn't. And the addiction to video games was so severe at that point that I played from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed. And so, yeah, like I really wanted to die, but like God, yeah, God was drawing me to him. God was drawing me to Jesus. I just didn't know it at the time. Like looking back, the first time I saw God and working in my life, obviously it was there before, but the first obvious sign that he was working in my life was that psychosis. Without that psychosis, I might have killed myself drinking. The only reason I got into recovery and sought the help I needed was because of that psychosis. So when I couldn't cope with it anymore, I would just repeat in my head, like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, kind of like a mantra, just over and over again, just try and cope with the voices until it calmed down a bit. And so yeah, so then I got desperate during that year, and I prayed for the first time in my life. Like I expressed earlier, I never really understand things like God and all that stuff. And I never prayed, even though I went to a Catholic school. Like it was all forced prayers, just the ones to make you do it in class. But like I never prayed for myself. And so I prayed for God. I prayed to God. There's two prayers. The first prayer was, Father, please remove the mental obsession for these video games. Like I don't want to play them anymore. They're like taking up my whole life. And then maybe a week later, or however long it was, I played for an hour in the morning and I was done. Just like that, I played for an hour and I went the whole day without playing any more of it. And so God answered that prayer. And then the next prayer, because I was still extremely suicidal, but God had put a spark in me that wanted to live, right? Like this spark of life. And so I grabbed onto that spark and I discovered this metal song where this guy screaming to the mic where like, these are his darkest days. And he's begging God to just let him see one more day. So I started repeating that to God every day. And yeah, eventually I got the insight that I should go back to that program that I left. And at this point, I had been away for so long, and people normally get kicked out at this point. But for some reason, they kept me on the list. They saw I was willing, they took me back. And that started the next part of my journey. And so now I wasn't so agnostic as I used to be. I believed there was at least a higher power. I didn't know what it was. And I didn't really seek it for another 3 or 4 years, but like at least it was there. And so the quick summary of the next 4 years is basically on meds. I'm stuck in a numb depression, not full-blown suicidal, but living still pointless and I still want to die. And after about 3 or 4 years of that, like I'm like, there has to be more. Like I can't just stay in this. Like I'm just going to end up killing myself. But like the spark was still in me, the spark that wanted to live, right? So I'm like, okay, so something answered my prayers, something made a miracle in my life. And throughout all this, I'd be relapsing too. Like I get a year sober relapse, 2 years sober relapse. Like there was no lasting recovery, right? And so I decided I'm going to seek whatever this thing is that answered my prayers and that helped me out in the early recovery. And so that started my journey of seeking God. And I started in the wrong area. I started in a pagan world. Like I wanted to be a druid, and I went to festivals and rituals and all this kind of stuff. And like there's definitely that helped my belief more of the spiritual, that there are things unseen, because like the spiritual energy there is just so overwhelming that it's impossible to deny. But like it's deceiving, right? Because it felt good. Like I was manic there. I'm like, this feels good. Like I have all this energy, like I'm loving people, but like but there's just this voice in my head telling me like, you don't belong there. It just kept repeating that to me. Like it wasn't the psychosis, right? It was like insight. And I didn't listen to it at first because it felt good to be there. But then after a while, I listened to it and I reflected on my time being there. And I realized whatever I was feeling there, like the spiritual energy was trying to dominate me. It was changing who I was. Like I wasn't myself in these places. And it was trying to turn me into someone that I didn't like, that I didn't want to be. And so I got scared and I stopped seeking again for about a year. and I just distanced myself from the whole thing. And but then yeah, and I was seeking other things too. I got like acupuncture, like ear point acupuncture, that helped with the side effects of the meds, but not actually like healing, and some other things. And but then I decided to search for God again. I had a friend that was Christian, so he was starting to facilitate or lead a Bible study group, and I joined this Bible study group. And like as soon as I joined it, like the enemy was all over me, attacking me. Like he likes using my intellect against me, and I'm making up all these things why it's not real. How like I'm not gonna get into it, but anyway, so but like once again, I felt something there like I did in this pagan world. In the pagan world, I felt something spiritual, and here I felt something spiritual too. The difference is it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't trying to dominate me. It was telling me like it was accepting me as I was. It didn't matter that I was broken and that hurting and I was like sinful and all this kind of stuff. It just said welcome home. And like I felt like this is home. And so I believed in everything. I believed in God, the devil, and angels, and demons, and the Holy Spirit, but I didn't believe in Jesus. But like I wanted to with all my heart. So another 6 months of that, where I just kept going to churches and talking to different people and going to Bible studies, and went to like retreats, and like I wanted to believe in Jesus with all my heart because he was home. Like he was, I just couldn't cross that barrier yet. Then one day I think God just gave me the faith, and I just believed. Like all of someone asked me if I believe, and I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, I believe. And he's like, you want to get baptized? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I got baptized in the guy's bathtub, and I just kept hearing in my head over and over, like, I love you, I love you, I love you, just being repeated over and over. And I found home. And I started reflecting back on my childhood. I kept seeking something. I didn't know what it was. And I realized the moment I got baptized, I was seeking God the whole time. I had this void, this empty space inside of me that nothing could fill. I kept trying, and I tried to fill it with alcohol and drugs when I found that, because I thought that's what would fill it. But it never got filled. And it was God that was missing. It was this missing piece inside of me. It was the Holy Spirit. And just I realized all this, and like when I got baptized, and I'm like, I finally, what I've been searching for like, what was it, like 32 years at this point, was like, I finally found it, and I've come home. And yeah, that was a game changer. Like, I mean, it's been a process. Well, sorry, I'm choking on my saliva. It's been a process, it hasn't been like this instant healing. That does happen, but my journey is a bit different. Is God teaching me and building me up through like, it's been like 4 years now, 3.5 years. And like at first I was just learning to be with God, like building faith and like belief in him, and like going through learning the Bible, and growing my belief in the sincerity and the truth of the word. And I was still seeking, right? I was seeking for healing, and I'd go to God, but then I started going to humans and doing like all these good things, right? Like inner prayer ministry, inner healing prayer ministry, but I was going to people, not to God. And I just kept hearing God saying to me, like, just turn to me. He wasn't telling me not to do these things. These things aren't bad, they do help, but I wasn't turning to him. So through this process, he taught me to turn to him, and I eventually just tried that. And I'm like, so I went in prayer meditation and started spending time reading the word and listening to worship music and spending time with God. And that's when I started getting breakthroughs with my mental health, because at this point I still had the depression. Like I still not quite suicidal, but didn't want to live. But like this spark of life in me was bigger now. Like I had a will to live and to seek relationship with God. And just through spending time in prayer and meditation, God would like, I mean, I'm at 19 minutes now, so I don't have time to go into everything he's broken me through. But like one of the big ones, like I felt like God wanted me to work on persistent prayer, not just pray for something and give up, right? Like wait on the Lord. And so I started doing that, and I prayed for him to take away the depression. And he eventually did. And I was left in a worse spot than when I was depressed. I was starting to struggle even more. And it took about a couple of weeks, but I started realizing like the depression wasn't the issue. That was the symptom. Like there's something inside of me. Like I'm in constant emotional pain right now. And it's like horrible. The depression was helping me cope with that. And so I started distracting from it with like video games and cigarettes and caffeine. And it got to the point where I was going to drink again. Like I'm outside the LCBO. I'm like, God, I don't want to do this, but I'm about to like do something. Like I can't, like I'm about to drink again. And when I drink, it's to kill myself. That's my form of suicide. And God would give me a break, and then the desire to drink would just go away, the obsession would just go away, and then I'd go back at it, still distracting in other means. And eventually I realized God spoke to me. Everything, this broken coping mechanisms that I'm using to distract from the pain is adding to the pain. This pain has to do with me suppressing emotions when I was 17. I'm now like 33. It's been like 15 years, and like I'm just adding to the pain by distracting. And so I'm like, okay, fine, I'm going to take an hour a day and spend time in prayer and meditation with you. And through that time of prayer and meditation, he started bringing memories to me and just like bringing things up that I'm holding on to. And so I started letting go of all these little things that I thought weren't affecting me, but they were. And I just started praying like forgiveness and repentance, and that relieved the pain, and that relieved the depression. And I've still dealt with depression since then, even to the point of being suicidal. But like it's not nearly as severe, it's not nearly as painful. But yeah, one thing I've learned from all this, like because sometimes I wonder, like, how long am I going to suffer with mental health? And like I've realized, like it doesn't really matter. Like what matters in all this to me, like what gives me meaning, what gives me joy, is seeking God. It's not about the answers I get or the healing I get. Like it's about being in a relationship with Him and seeking Him. Like He's a mystery for a reason. It's not to He wants us to seek Him. It's part of the relationship to get to know Him intimately as an actual Father. And yeah, and the other thing I learned too is like no matter what happens in this life, like God's got me. Like I was on the edge of drinking again and wanting to kill myself, and He took me away from it. Like God's got me. It doesn't matter what this world throws at me. I could live in poverty for the rest of my life. Like God still got me.